Why do we feel like we're not good enough? Why are we so dependent on others for our self-worth?
Why do we seek this validation and approval from others? And where does this innate sense of lack actually come from?
In today's episode of Somewhere in the Middle, we're going to explore these questions in depth.
Hey everyone, I'm Smita.
Hi everyone, I'm Srishti.
Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle, a show where we explore how to navigate life with more ease and joy, and we hope to be friends on this pathless path.
So, in the previous episode 2 of Somewhere in the Middle, we explored this feeling of I'm not good enough and how it manifests across our lives in different areas. And today, we want to go into the depth of it, like where does it really come from?
Yeah, so as we think about when we were born and we were babies, I think the one most important thing we needed was to be loved. And as we grow older, this need is also shows up as the need to be seen, the need to be heard. And I think a lot of childhood experiences shape what goes on to be adult behaviors and patterns. Like I think now the world is much more informed about trauma and what happens, and especially early childhood experiences, our relationship with our parents and siblings and close ones at that time, especially the first 7 years of our life, and how that determines our attachment styles, different the way we respond in different situations.
Yeah, I think so. As human beings, like this is one species where we need the maximum number of years, one of the maximum number of years of caregiving, where the baby needs to come into an adult form or be able to take care of themselves. And since we're so dependent on our primary caregivers for formation of our self-image and our self-worth, so their personality or how they behave with us as children determines a lot how we turn out to be in the future, how we feel about ourselves, right? So, for example, if I had a parent who had very high standards and who was critical, then anything I did, maybe they would always be like, "Oh, this is good, but you can do better." Or if, say, someone's parents had very strong notions of how the child should be. Oh, like they should be achievers or they should perform really well in sports or in studies. And maybe the child wasn't so good at those things, but the child was good at something else. So then whatever the child did would not be good enough for getting the parents' approval. And it would always be like, oh, I need to do more, I need to do more to get a smile from my parent or get appreciation from my parent. And as adults, that sometimes manifests as us being overachievers, trying to do a lot, and not feeling like the way I am is enough. And so it coming out of a space of, oh, I need to do this to feel good, instead of saying, oh, I feel good, so I want to do this.
Or it could also manifest as some having parents who maybe denied the child's reality. For example, a very sensitive child might be upset about certain scenarios where the parent felt like, no, this is nothing to be upset about, and maybe they sort of denied the fact that there is upset, there is somebody feeling a certain way, right? And this goes on into adulthood to manifest as somebody who had to explain a lot, like who over explains, over sort of always is watchful about the fact that what they're saying may be perceived as not true, right? Or it could even be a parent who has very volatile reactions to anything that the child brought in, and that also leads to a lot of going ahead and as an adult sort of over explaining and over sort of compensating and being very highly vigilant and alert about how the other person perceives you, because you're going back to that childhood pattern of like, oh, my parents or my primary caregivers were used to get very upset with me, right? And so you want to be watchful of that, even though now you're an adult and there's no such scenario playing out here. Those those patterns are so embedded deeply into us.
Yeah, and another thing is also like if you were not seen as a child, right? Like maybe the parent was busy, or
Is
maybe yeah, you grew up with a lot of people, and there were
mm,
so many people to take care of, and you didn't get the attention. So in that case, it even as adults, it could feel like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. There's no accountability, and it doesn't matter whether I exist or not.
yeah,
And yeah, maybe to show my existence, I need to do something.
right.
So just as I am not enough.
That's how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes almost like a belief uh, that that is the reality for us. And
Yeah.
even though right now the situation might be very different, and we feel loved and cared for, but we always our mind always goes back.
Yeah, it's very fascinating how this plays out. And the first time I sort of came across this, and even now when I see some of this, I don't think any of us escape this, like in one way or the other, even though our parents were not trying to do any of this, like it just happens, right?
Hmm.
Like they have their patterns that they come with, the situations that they were facing, and then that's the best way they knew how to respond at that point. And so now when I sort of see that, it's firstly very shocking, and it's like, wow, this is why I'm doing this. And the way to break through out of this, and what I've seen, is that firstly you notice it, and you sort of realize
Hmm.
this is why I feel this way. And as soon as that awareness comes in, there is a chance for you now to just notice, and just the fact that, yeah, now I'm an adult, I'm not in that same situation. And so there is a better way to respond right now. I don't need to be so worried. And once you can sort of basically calm that inner child in you, things can play out very differently.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm here to take care of myself.
Yeah,
I
right.
earlier we were so dependent and we didn't know better. Now we do know better, and we
Um,
can recognize when that is happening and where is that feeling really coming from,
yeah.
and take stock of the present reality that, oh, what I'm thinking, is that really true?
Mm.
Um, so that, and another thing which, like after learning about this, or noticing that, oh, this is what is happening, is that it was so freeing because it's there in the air, right? Like love
Yeah.
is in the air sometimes. This thing is there in the air, and it's not my fault, it's not our fault that
Yeah.
we we
And we're
turned
not
out this
alone,
way.
right? And that's the other part where we're
Yeah.
not alone. It's like we're all together in this. This is not just, some of this doesn't even stem from our personal experience. Some of it is in the collective, like if women, as women, for example, if we feel I'm not good enough, it's much deeper than just maybe my parents didn't tell me that, but it was
Mm.
all around me. So I've picked that up as well. It's like
Yeah.
like you said, it's there's nobody to blame. It's like as a collective, as a society, this
Mm.
is the best people knew what, to sort of react and respond. And now we're identifying that, okay, this is what happens, and this causes certain traumas and causes certain behavior patterns. And now I think there is light ahead, I guess, right?
So if you are experiencing any of this, or you have felt like, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, no one sees me, and I need to always keep doing something, whether for others or for myself, just more and more and more. So just pause and take a stock of where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Might
One
reveal some
one
answers.
resource that Srishti and I both found very helpful to sort of just learn where we came across this, on Instagram, there's a holistic psychologist. We can link in the description, I guess. Where she really details out very specific scenarios, and you can really connect if you've sort of been through that. You can sort of connect it back. And then, that's where it starts. Like first step is awareness.
We spoke about how our childhood conditioning can lead to certain beliefs about ourselves, whether we feel good about ourselves, and or do we feel not good enough. Another thing that comes to mind is once we grow up, right? Um, and as adults, we place a lot of importance on outward things to feel good about ourselves. So, like how I'm being perceived in society, how much I'm earning, what is my lifestyle like, Am I taking vacations? Am I able to provide well for my family, my career, and all of that? So, yeah, so I'm just wondering why that happens, or in what ways are we doing that, right? And is there an end to it? Because it keeps going on and on in my experience.
Yeah. So it's very interesting when you peel this back a little bit, right? Like you said, of course there is a certain innate need, or like need that comes about, like, okay, I need to have a livelihood, or I need to provide for my family, which is a very basic, probably a basic level of, like, I need to have food on the table, right? But I don't
Mm.
think it ends there for anybody. So if so, then I think a lot of the world would be contented right now. But we see that if I have a certain amount of money, a certain kind of a job, I'm looking to the next level all the time. I want the next better vacation, the next level of luxury that I can have. And then, and you think, okay, you find these role models who probably influence us to say, okay, this is what I should be aiming for. And then you notice that, okay, let's say you catch hold of them, and then is it that they are very contented, and you realize no, they are looking to the next role
Mm.
model that they have. And this is like, that's where you see that this is a trap, this is a never ending trap, where it is never going to be enough. It's never going to be, okay, I have enough money, or I have my dream job, or any of those things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, as we reach like the next step, say on the ladder, then our goal shifts. So the goal
Yeah.
is always and constantly shifting in all aspects of life. I feel like it's like an elusive goal post,
Yeah.
and it's we're not never going to get to it because our requirements change once we get to it. And so it's about, if I place my sense of self and my sense of self-worth on that, then I'm never going to feel enough because
Yeah.
I'm never going to have it.
It's of course, at one level, you the immediate thought comes in saying, okay, so what's wrong, right? Like, what's wrong with actually um having the next goal, or isn't it very
Mm.
natural and right? And but like you said, if your self-worth is tied to that, there's no never you're never going to feel good enough. Versus, but I
Yeah.
think there is still a place for those, that next goal, or that next thing you want to achieve. It's just, I think the difference is about where we come from, or what is the energy
Mm.
that we're approaching this with. Is it some is Are you coming from a space of lack, like, I don't have this, I don't feel, I'm only going to feel good enough
Mm.
if and when I have this. Versus, like, you're inspired maybe to take that action. Like you were speaking about the gym, like, I look at somebody who's really fit, and I want that for myself. And you start training for that, and you're working towards that, not from a space of, oh, if I don't have it, I'm not going to be good. But it's just for, because you're inspired to do that, or that will give you joy, right? You come from a space of joy versus trying to keep seeking from a space of lack. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the energy while you were sharing about both of those, right? And the first one where I'm like, oh no, I need to achieve this. Oh no, when will I get my next raise? Or this vacation didn't happen, this house didn't happen, etc.
Yeah.
So there I'm never feeling content. Like imagine going through our whole lives with that feeling of, oh my God, like that it's already giving me anxiety thinking
Yeah.
about it.
It's the rat race that you run, like, the literally, I think it's the hamster wheel that they talk about also, like, where you're like,
Yeah,
you're going on and you're never going to get out of it, you're never going to reach the end.
yeah, yeah. And of course, making things better and better is good because, I mean, the universe progress happens and growth happens and expansion happens. So it's not about not desiring those things or not taking action, but it's just like you said, where are we coming? Where am I coming from? Right? Which space am I coming from? So, like, yeah, right now I have so much. Like, can I kind of come back to that space that, oh, what are the things that are right in my life, or what do
Yeah.
I feel good about? Whether it's some my qualities or things I have, anything, right? Or the love I have in my life. And yeah, these are such beautiful things and good things. And Also, just this thought that's been coming, and I've been experimenting with it, is that, say, instead of being like, oh no, there's so much traffic, oh no, I got late to my appointment, etc., etc., can I just think that, oh, what if this is the most perfect moment of my life?
Right.
Or just this affirmation that there is no ordinary moment. Every moment is perfect. Every
Extra.
moment
Yeah.
is exactly how it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And once I started doing that, I started noticing a lot of interesting things. Like, for example, if I'm driving in traffic, then I see a bunch of friends and they're like having a really hearty laugh. And, I felt the joy that they were feeling, for
True.
example. Or I was driving and then uh, there was like a one way. I mean, I was blocked in traffic and then I had to like really take a long turn and drive for half an hour. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. It's causing me a little anxiety because there's so much traffic and I'm just learning to drive well. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, this is good practice.
Yeah. There's always a way to reframe our whatever situation in that sense and notice the perfection, like you said, or notice those little
Hmm.
details. I think as soon as you come to that state of gratitude or like just appreciation for what is, you also tend to notice more of these, notice
Hmm.
more of what is right, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to see that this feeling of chasing and not being good enough, right, till I achieve that next goal, it's not mine or it's not yours. It's there again, like the
Of course.
childhood upbringing and traumas. It's there, I think, as a shared experience of
Yeah.
humanity, and it's not something that we've created. It's just how maybe our brains are
Yeah.
wired.
It's just how our society is set up in at the current
Hmm.
in current times,
Hmm.
right? Like that's what's valued. We value hustle over slowing down. We value productivity versus rest, right? Like, and we've made it all into one opposes the other kind of a scenario, versus maybe
Hmm.
it's like it needn't be the case exactly, right? But we've created that, and so where we look down upon one and we glorify the other,
Hmm.
and I think that's why there's a lot of imbalance. And so, yeah, and to just notice that. And once you've sort of noticed and seen through the trap that we spoke about, I
Hmm.
think then you're free already. And because
Hmm.
you can start, yeah, as you dehypnotize, you're already dehypnotized by it to some extent.
Between the two scenarios that we spoke about, where in one where I'm chasing and grasping for things in life and just chasing after the next, right? Between that versus operating out of the space of, oh, I'm feeling good right now, I'm content, I like myself, I feel good, and then working towards growth, like, oh, but I feel like doing this, I
Mm.
feel like taking that job, or whatever I feel like going on that vacation, how wonderful it would be to do that, right? So between these two, in the first one, I'm feeling like a sense of uh, contraction, like, oh my god, what's going to happen, etc. And in the second one, I'm feeling a sense of relief, ease,
Yeah.
happiness, joy, right? And then operating out of that. So now I'm wondering, like, what's the difference between these two, right? The only difference is my perception of how I'm thinking about it. And it's the same situation. Maybe I'm going after the same things in both the scenarios, exactly the same things, but just the sense with which I'm going into it and the feeling and how my body mind feels are very different. So here it's basically how I'm perceiving it, how my mind is perceiving both of these situations. Um, so what causes the mind to be like this?
Yeah. It brings us to that question, right? Like, okay, why is the nature of the mind, I guess that's the answer actually. Like the nature of the mind is to be restless. Like why are we always in a state of discontentment, or why is it so hard to stay in that state of contentment or satisfaction? Yeah, it's just that the nature of the mind is to be restless. It's always sort of looking out for uh, how to sort of protect us.
Hmm.
um yeah,
Yeah.
I think the
And
very design of the mind is that's it's almost, it's like that's the purpose. Like it has to be watching out for you. Like it stems from that sense of self, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So in the Sankhya Yoga traditions, in India, like there are these four components. So manas, which is, so it can be taken as the mind,
Yeah.
chitta, buddhi, and ahankar. We are like one unit, and so in some scenarios, we are thinking about the whole benefit of my entire family. Then I will also think about my friends or like people I care about, close people, right? So then that's again expanding my sense of self into this next circle or next layer. And if you're, say, people who are leading some organizations or NGOs, etc., then their sense of self will be for their employees, for their team, and how their business is doing. That whole entity becomes their self. And then if I go into philanthropic work and where I'm really um, caring about other individuals in the society who are not related to me as such, but yeah, because of the cause I'm caring for them, or like if you're the leader of a country or something,
Yeah.
then again it expands even further, right? So even the sense of self and what I care about, that kind of keeps expanding. um
Yeah, or you might even find like these inspiring stories. Like we hear about a Mother Teresa who could, you know, who cared for so many more people in such a deep way. Or even these acts of selflessness that we hear about, like somebody else jumped in to save somebody, right, at the cost of their own life. Or like, or we think about saints and sages who have bodhicitta, or like who are sort of put all sentient beings on the planet, and who have compassion and care for all beings as much as they have about themselves, right? Like, or more, right? And that's their whole goal or aim, and that's their sense of self is defined like that. And so you see how this is so malleable almost, and starts off, of course, with this very narrow my mind, my body, and then as I don't know whether it's, I think it's a sense of training or conditions, causes and conditions, momentum that bring about this expansion almost. Of course, a very simple
mm,
example is like motherhood, role of a parent, right? Like where you say, okay, already my sense of self expands to my child. Like I care about my child as much or more than I care for myself. And maybe you're willing to do
mm,
that, right? You're willing to um, put yourself in harm if you find that your child will be saved from harm. And
yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting to see how this is so malleable, like the sense of self.
Mm.
And that's where everything starts, and then your mind, of course, comes in to protect that. uh,
Yeah, yeah, and then kind of connecting it with what we were talking earlier of how we're not feeling good enough, and it being driven by a lot of comparisons and what we are seeing others achieve, or what we feel like we are meant to be doing or should be doing, right? So then, if I'm not seeing you as separate than me,
yeah.
and suppose you're doing really well in life, and I'm like, oh no, I wish I've had those things, etc., and I don't feel good right now about where I'm at. That's only happening because I'm seeing you as separate from me, and my area of self is just me and, say, my family, my friends,
Yeah.
and not an expanded sense of humanity or society.
Yeah.
um and even say global warming or a lot of these things that are happening in society right now is because I'm protecting my own house, my own
True.
circle, and baki, like what is happening outside it, it's okay. I don't care so
I
much.
don't care.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, once I've achieved satisfaction in my circle, then I'll think about those things. Like, oh, I'm just too
Yeah.
concerned right now about my own things, and hence I cannot, I don't know, give time to, say, ask you how you're feeling, or give time to this maybe cleaning of my street or whatever.
Yeah, these examples are so such vivid examples of how our sense of self, and even though it's so clear, right? Like we know that we're all interconnected, and one thing will impact the other. Like, one thing happening on one side of the planet will definitely impact the other side. But still, we're so myopic. Like you said, even the street, like even there, we can't even expand our sense of self sometimes, even to that much, to say, hey, if your street is dirty, it's going to impact you as much as the other person. You can see how as humans we're so myopic almost. Like even in these very practical things, we're not able to see it. We're almost blinded by
Mm.
protecting our immediate goals, or our immediate what we think will benefit us, or versus in the long run. So yeah, so it feels like a stretch already to think about, okay, can I actually place you over my and not see you as separate, in fact, because
Mm.
all our stories, if you look at every aspect of our suffering, including I'm not good enough, is the fact that I'm so interested in, like, if I say myself, like it's in Smita and her story, her life story, and how it should be a certain way, how it should be
Mm.
good, how it should be, yeah, whatever I think is perfect and the way to for it to be, and compare it to everyone else, and then suffer. The whole story, the whole suffering starts with the fact that I have made my identity into this body mind, and that's where then all the stories starts to spin, whether it's career or money or health or relationships or whatever it is.
While conceptually, when I think about it, we are all interconnected in a way, because when I look at my life and everything that's happened, and every person I've met or every experience I've had has shaped some aspect of who I am today. And one connection has led to something else, and that has led to something else
Hmm.
in different areas of life, right? So then that way, like you said, that something happening on the other side of the world is impacting will impact me. Maybe it's not evident. Like if I'm just doing my own thing in my own house, maybe I won't realize it, but somewhere it is impacting. Every exposure we've had with someone does impact it. Even in, say, heightened states of awareness, like in meditation or something, I do feel my area or sense of self really expanding, maybe to cover even the world at times.
Hmm.
But when I come back to real life, which is my day-to-day activities, etc., it it's it's not evident to me that yeah, we're all connected, or my sense of self includes everybody. Then it comes back to Srishti's life, Srishti's stories, Srishti's sufferings, and what I'm wanting right now in life and what I don't have. So yeah, it's not easy to be in that state. And right now, if I'm not in that state, then it feels like just a mere intellectual concept that, oh yeah, this is a nice to have. And but right now I'm too busy with my things. And yeah, right now I don't have the capability or capacity to think of others or consider the whole world as one, and hence there's no separation.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point you made about it being intellectual. And I feel like this is the whole journey of uh, spirituality, right? Like almost, I feel like that's the essence of it in some ways, because you start with the idea that, oh, yeah, I'm separate. My whole world feels like that, like everything is set up like that. But then when so that's why we suffer more too, like, and then realize, okay, my suffering comes from this sense of self being limited to this body mind, but it's hard for me to say, okay, why am I not this body mind then? So I think that's where for me personally, like, the entire uh, area of self inquiry or non duality has sort of helped, or at least start to, I mean, peel back those layers to say, okay, I believe I am this body mind, is, and I'm so sure of it, like, of course
Mm.
that's how it feels. And then to just sort of check, okay, is that really true? Like, is that true? Or like you're saying, like, when you're meditating, you don't feel that your sense of self gets expanded, or like we were discussing, in certain scenarios our sense of self expands a little bit, and we've seen different people having more expanded sense of self too. But even if you come back to your very own experience, you see that it shifts, right? It shifts in your
Mm.
meditation, even, let's say, for example. And then you start to play with that, and if you start to really question, okay, who am I? Like, what is this I that I'm so sure that it's just this body mind, and what is this mind? And yeah, if you sort of peel those layers back, I think there's a whole, it takes you on that whole journey of, like, what is this self, and like, And of course, it's not something that in one day it goes from an intellectual thing to a very experiential thing. I guess it's something that we keep asking repeatedly, and we keep integrating it back, like what we find through that inquiry. And
Yeah.
and what I found is this inquiry can't be, definitely can't be intellectual. It's not like, oh yeah, okay. Everyone says, oh yeah, I see how we're connected, but it'll have to be put through that real test of like, okay, when it comes to different experiences of your life which are not so pleasant, will you still be able to believe that, right? And we see that
Hmm.
we're not, obviously, because like we're saying, even if it comes to the different, the street being clean, we're not able to take that hit of like, okay, can I make better choices for the or climate change or any of those things we talk about? Can I make the harder choice, because I truly believe we're all connected? I
Hmm.
think even there we are not yet there. So yeah, I think it's a long journey of finding out this truth of
Yeah.
how we are connected, how we are one at the end of the day.
Yeah. And just while that intellectual concept doesn't help, what it does is it gives me a possibility that, oh, this is one possibility. And maybe in my experience, mm, when I do experience that, if at all, then I'll realize, oh, it was not just an intellectual concept, it is true. And so with these repeated nudges or experiences or glimpses of that
Yeah.
experience, then it has potential to expand in other areas of life and more frequently. So yeah, I would love to discuss in detail about this. It's such an interesting topic, but maybe for another episode.
Yeah, maybe we can explore it in one of the upcoming ones. So hope all of you enjoyed hearing our explorations of why we feel we're not good enough, and I hope that was in some way helpful, or yeah, or at least brought you some ease.
So see you in the next episode of Somewhere in the Middle, and have a
Thank
lovely day.
thank you for watching.